So that's how we post stuff to Google Classroom, by the way. I don't know if you ever did that. Let's go back into our Word doc then. And I'll minimize this. And so yesterday, here's what we did. We actually talked about using random velocity on a MIDI track. Yep, we did that. And we did talk about temporary grouping. What I actually didn't get into is actual grouping. So very quick, as you know, over in the mixer, you do have a group option here. So if you click on that, you can start a new group. And obviously that new group you can name, and we'll just call this MIDI tracks. All right. But the good thing about this grouping window is that it's going to give you the options of what kinds of things you want linked together. Now, right now, I actually have them all linked together because I have them all highlighted together. But let's say I unhighlight them. So now let's mess around with this group. So we can actually edit a selection, quantize locked audio. So we can actually have them all edit. Even if one is locked, they'll react within the group. Our track alternatives, which we know becomes a track header take file. We've done that before. It's actually down here on the Vox track. We'll do that later again. We can link volume, mute, pan, solo, recording inputs, all our sends, our colors, our track zoom, our hiding. So those are the settings for your group. If you recall in Pro Tools, grouping had a very similar thing where we could add and subtract different things both on the track and globally. And a very similar thing happens here. It just happens within the group window. Excuse me. So yeah, there we go. That's how you would create a manual group as opposed to a temporary group, which would just be highlighting these 4 tracks. I would highlight these 4 tracks. And of course, like we said yesterday, I can pan, right? And they all pan. That's not something that's necessarily linked to the group. Or our settings, and actually it's not. So you could see that it's not linked in the group settings. But if I did, right, and I unhighlight them, check it out. They all do pan together. That's because right now I have them in a group together. So there is a difference between grouping and creating a temporary selection group. Just be aware of those differences. So that's what we did yesterday. And we just want to kind of go through that again for those of you who want to take notes and keep notes and all that other good stuff. We talked about feedback on a track being a problem. Feedback is when a sound leaves a speaker into a mic and back out of the speaker, and it creates this loop, and that loop is recorded. The thing is, it's mixed into what you're recording, so it's very difficult to remove feedback in a recording. So the answers to that question is, what if feedback is on the track? Answer, re-record it. Is there any ways to fix it afterwards? Answer, there are some small things you can do. There are some third-party plugins that help it, but there is nothing that will fully remove feedback from a track. There is nothing that will fully remove feedback from a track that would be effective and not detrimental to the original recording. How can you use track stacks? Well, we did a ton of track stacking yesterday. Again, we looked at summing, we looked at folders, we looked at taking things in and out of track stacks. Again, this is all review, as you know. So I want to get into some of the new questions that you guys have about Logic that were generated from the master class assignment. And again, just for the people who just jumped in, there's 3 or 4 people that just came in. I just posted the questions that I'm looking at right here. So these are the questions that I took from you guys, and I'm answering them throughout the week. And then I posted those questions here. So if you'd like to download this, print it, write notes, whatever you need to do, that would be fine, because a lot of the questions for Friday's test are going to be generated from this question bank. And I'll reword them, obviously. It's not going to be the exact same questions, but, the whole point here is to very carefully go through question by question and answer the best we can. So you have a better understanding of A, what was going on in that masterclass, but B, what's going on here in Logic Pro. All right. Let's work with some MIDI. All right. Let me grab my MIDI controller. It's around here somewhere. Yep. It's right here in my utility bag. And I'm going to go ahead and plug in my MIDI controller really quick so we actually have some MIDI notes to play with, because the stuff that I've recorded isn't necessarily how I want to use or answer these questions, we'll say. All right, so how can I filter an 808? That's a good question, whoever the hell you were. How can I filter an 808? So let's go in and start an 808. I'm going to go into my Yamaha Grand Piano, by the way, and I'm going to actually make a duplicate track. This is another one of those questions. So if I hit new track with duplicate settings, it's actually going to copy everything about this Yamaha track, not the audio, not the MIDI, not the performances, but it's going to copy all the settings. So things like the XS24, the channel EQ and its settings, the compressor and its settings, the tape delay and its settings, and of course the bussing and all of the amount of bussing that's leaving the channel. So our grand piano, as cool as it is, isn't what we want. We wanted an 808 because that was the answer. So I'm going to go into drum kit. I'm going to head on over to, electronic drum kit, my bad. And I'm going to use just regular drum machine, and I'm going to use a boutique 808. Should I use that one? Yeah, no. Yes, that's the only one. That's what I thought. So we're going to head and grab the boutique 808. And as you know, so there's my 808. All right. And now, so the question was, how do I filter that 808? Well, there's filtering depends on what your definition of filtering is. If you want to talk about filtering in regards to the sound, of course, you can go into the settings of the 808 by jumping into, and I can't see it here, so let me bring it up here. There we go. I can go in and change the boutique. And of course, it's in my electronic drum kit and my drum machine. Or I can try to get into the original input, meaning the 808 or the, um, in this case, it's on bus 9, which is this guy. And so there's my empty kit from before. And then here is, I believe, another empty kit. Sure. But I can go back into the original signal, which is obviously going to be generated from Ultrabeat, and go in and edit those signals using LFOs or envelope filters and things like that. But again, it all depends on your definition of what you think filtering is. In this case, I could actually add EQ and compression, which technically does filter sound. I can actually add a filtering plugin. So there's a filter where I can go in and put in spectral gate filtering or test oscillator filtering or auto filter. Again, depending on what your definition of filtering is. The other thing we could do is add MIDI effects to it, things like arpeggiators and other elements that would basically change the sound. But I think the general thing is, how do I change the 808? The sound of the 808 is being generated by wave files that are samples on your machine. In order to filter them, you either have to go to the root application where the signal is, or you have to filter them after the signal has passed through the generator and onto the track. Now, once it's on the track, you can see that I can go in and mess around with the EQ a little bit. And if I want to turn it into more of some sort of electronic or hi-fi, does change what the signal is. This is pre, and this is post. So it's a little bit of a boost down here between, let's say, 50 and about 170. So you're going to get a little more low end out of that. So that would be your filtering element. And then again, if you want to take it to the next step, you go into a compressor. You can compress it differently using one of these presets to start and then move on it from there. So not only did I get a little low end out of it, now I'm getting a little bit of the power out of it. So it does filter, quote unquote, filter your signal. But that's basically an 808. Now, there are some other ways of taking what you've done and changing it. Obviously, you can bus it out. You can send it to a output. You can turn MIDI into audio and then filter it using audio effects. I mean, there's so many different ways you can do that. Again, there's not going to be an answer for you that's going to say, hey, I know what you want to do in your head. Let me just do exactly what you're thinking. I can't do that. You have to do what you're thinking because you know in your head what it should sound like. So then the key is being able to utilize the software to get it there. And again, there's a lot of different ways to get it there. So you got to go back through and try to figure out, knowing what you know now about EQ, compression, MIDI effects, the original signals being generated. Where do I want to filter it? How do I want to filter it? And what is my end result going to be? And then using the tools in the software to do so. All right. So how can I filter an 808? Boom. There we go. Answered. How can I reverse MIDI and audio? Ooh, I like it. Well, let's start with audio because that's pretty much the easiest. Let's go into this audio, which is literally just this. I got to turn that off. Oh, that's right. We had it on as a purposeful feedback. This is an example of feedback. Oh, geez. Feedback. One more. Feedback. There we go. So yeah, that was a feedback recording that we used yesterday. So let's say I wanted to reverse that. It's actually really simple. We're just going to head and double click on the clip. We're going to open it up here in the single waveform editor. We'll go to File tab, not the track tab, because that's the whole track. We'll go to File. And again, we're going to make sure we're selected on the clip we want to reverse. And we're going to go to Functions. And we're going to go to Reverse right here. And there we go. And this is what it sounds like. Not very pleasant, obviously, with the feedback in there, but you get the point. It's now a reversed piece of audio. And I can undo that and change it back, but that's how you would reverse audio. Now, there could be a multi-step process here for MIDI. Let's talk about what kind of MIDI it is. Well, first, let's take a listen to this empty drum kit that we created. I don't know if the sounds are still there. Yeah, they are. Okay, so there's my empty drum kit. How do I reverse this? Well, again, let's double click on it and let's see what options are available here in the MIDI editor. Again, I'm going to select all and let's go to Functions and let's do MIDI Transform and let's see if there's a reverse. There is a reverse position. So that's interesting. I'm not exactly sure what that's going to do, but let's take a look skis. And it's within my range here of that. Sorry, go back into here. And let's see what happens when I hit select and operate as we look at the MIDI notes. Whoops, there we go. There we go. Let's go select and operate. Interesting. Didn't look like much happened there. Nothing on that level. All right, let's play it back. So not much happened there, and more than likely what we're doing is reversing position inside of, let's do all. Let's see if that does anything. Well, there we go. Yeah, we got something out of that. So yeah, it looks like it reversed the entire order of the MIDI notes. So again, I'll select them all. We'll make sure that everything's included in the reverse, and then we'll select and operate, and there it goes. Somehow, some way, it just flipped everything. So this is what it sounds like. Sounds pretty nasty, but you can reverse positions of MIDI notes utilizing the MIDI Transform window. In regards to the samples themselves, if we go into the EXS24, which is over here in my mixer, go right to my mixer, and we'll go into my, drum machine designer. I don't know if we can reverse it through this. I don't believe we can, because it doesn't give me a reverse feature in my smart controls. I do know that if we're able to get into something like an EXS24, we can go in and reverse it here. We can reverse the samples of the piano or drums or anything that we loaded in here. I do remember we took it out of EXS24 and put it into Drum Machine Designer. Let's see what this is. This is, okay, so here's some of them. These are all my reversed, now I'm reversing all my notes. And I had to exit this and we'll save that for now. And then of course, we'll do this. And then let's see if I, So those are all the samples being reversed using the EXS-24. So then the question becomes, can we truly reverse the entire performance on a MIDI clip? Like this MIDI clip here, can I reverse that and make it sound like all those notes were in reverse? I can't do that using Drum Machine Designer. I can use that with a EXS-24, but I want the whole clip to be in reverse. So to do that, we have to actually go back and treat it like audio. So what we'll do is we'll actually bounce out this clip to an audio file and then do what we did to the audio file to put it in reverse. So we'll go ahead and click on that. We'll do a little export as an audio file. We'll save it inside of my bounces, which is inside of my test. This is all very good. All well and good there. Now it's going to appear over here in my project, the bottom of my list. I believe that will be there. Or will not be. Let's see where it ended up here. It's alphabetical, or maybe it's at the top. I wonder where that went. All right, let's go pull it in then directly, because it's supposed to drop into my audio files folder. Although now that I looked at it, I think it went into the bounce folder, and it did. So there it is, and it's called Can Open for some reason. So we could drop that bad boy in there, basically representing the same audio that the MIDI file was. Let's solo this up and take a listen. Yeah, so there's my audio. And now in order to get that in reverse, we'll go ahead and click on it. Again, we'll go functions down here in the editor and we'll go reverse. And so now I've reversed my audio. Any day now. No, it didn't do it. Hold on. Click, file, functions, reverse. Well, it's reversing down here. Interesting. Doesn't want to, seems like it's locked. Oh, because it's locked into a, there we go. Because it was locked into a flex time, I believe. So let's see if we got it now. Functions, reverse. Nah, it doesn't want to reverse for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. No, that's still not in reverse. It's probably locked into something. I don't know why it's locked. We got to go find out why that is. I'm not going to waste too much time on it, but that's a simple process of doing it that way. Basically, what we're doing is taking MIDI, converting it to audio, and then treating it like it was audio to do the reverse. Here, just like this one that we had over here. This is an example of feedback. Okay, so we take that audio file, we do functions reverse, and there it goes. Now it's in reverse. Right, so that's basically what we're doing, but for some reason this track that I created is locked up and I can't do that. But that's what we do. We take MIDI, convert it out to audio, and then we reverse it. All right, so I think that pretty well covered all of the possible reverse concepts in Logic. How can I record multiple tracks? Oh, I'm glad you asked, person who I have no idea who that was, or don't have time to go back and find out who it was. Let's record multiple tracks, shall we? Now, let's start with what you need to record multiple tracks with. I think that's the first and foremost what you need to figure out. While we're doing this, let's also talk about guitar and amplifier and pedalboard, because I have an interface here. Let me just put my drink on the ground so I don't spill it on my computer. I have a interface here that allows me 2 channels of recording. You can have an interface that does 4 or 10 or 100. I don't know, depending on what you're doing day after day after day, or what you can afford, or what studio you're in, or whatever the case may be, right? So my interface is just like the ones at school. It's a Scarlett 2i2, which allows me to record 2 tracks simultaneously. And the process is exactly the same as it is to record 2 tracks than it is to record 4 or 10 or 18 or 20. So the first thing we're going to do, obviously, is we're going to start a new audio track. We're actually going to start 2 audio tracks for this case. We'll do 2 audio tracks, and they're going to send. That means input 1 and input 2 are going to be created on that. Now, with that said, you're going to hear some feedback here, as long as I don't have it cranked up. There it is, some feedback in this. And then I also have my guitar track, which is right there, which is a little loud. I'll turn that down. not bad for being an out-of-tune guitar. And so now if I wanted to record both these tracks, what I would do is I'd put record on both, and then I would hit record. And that's simply it. Here we go. Oh, you know what? Hold on. Hold the phone. I have the other thing on there. I want to dump that out of there. It's kind of obnoxious and annoying. And I want to put my loop on over here too. And we'll move it over here, and we'll pull out my punch in, and just make sure nothing's around that area. Okay, so we're going to record on both of these tracks. And of course, our auto punch in I just leave on for now. We can turn it off. It doesn't matter. And we have our loop on here. All right, so again, I'm going to hit record. Since I have both, let's say, inputs on my Scarlett 2i2 there, that means that I can have... It's not bad. Okay, so now I have my vocal track by itself, and I have my guitar track. So there it is. There's two tracks at a time, and we could solo them to see the differences in what they sound like. So this is the vocal track. Let's say inputs on my Scarlett 2i2 there. That means that I can have... And so what you're hearing is the mic that I'm speaking into also picking up the strumming. But if you wanted to hear the strumming by itself with no vocals, here's what that sounds like. So there you go. And that's what it would sound like to do two tracks at the same time. And again, this would then follow suit with 4 and 8. Let's take a look at the mixer, just so we can see the differences here. So I have audio 2 and audio 4. This would have my vocal track. This is my guitar track. You could see right now, input 1 is vocals, so that's me speaking, and input 2 is guitar. And so I can record them simultaneously at the same time. If I had an input 3, I'd set up a third track and have the input be 3. If I had a fourth track, I'd have an input 4 on track 4. So you could see how we can, basically align, or like I said, if you have a multi-channel interface that allows you to record multiple tracks at the same time, pretty cool. Very, very cool. So while we're here and while I have the guitar up and running, not that I, again, am a very good guitar player, but let's play a little something and mess around with Amp Designer and play around with the pedal board as well. So let's go into electric guitar. So by the way, I'm on an audio track. Here it is. There's my guitar. And I'm going to go ahead and pick a brand new library patch for this guitar so we can do something a little different. We'll start with just clean guitar, and we'll try to do like some sort of clean room, and you can hear it buzz up a little bit because I don't think the guitar is as grounded as it should be. There we go. Interesting, right? So there's clean room. Basically, clean room gives you a setup of plugins, of a noise gate, a pedal board, an amp, and so on and so forth down the line. I have a feeling the amp is what's causing that buzzing, yes. So whatever I'm using for my amp settings is giving me like a really harsh buzzing sound. I have a feeling if I move it over here, you're going to hear some different things happen. I don't know if you guys can pick that up in the mic, but changing your amplifier and changing your pedal board has big changes to the signal. So right now, the noise gate is just keeping the signal down. So all you're hearing is basically clean sound. All right. So let's get into pedal board really quick and see what kind of signals I can generate from this. Let's pop this bad boy on. And right now, there's a squash compressor. Turn it on. There's a tube burner. Turn that on. So you have a couple things you can do here. Also the vibe. So there, of course, as I turn these pedals on and off, the signal is going to change as I go. Now, these are presets. Obviously, when I added it using the Clean Room preset, this is what Clean Room has within it. But we can go in here and change that at any given time. I can go into overdrive and put on Metal Dragon. Ugh, sounds pretty nasty, doesn't it? That's a pretty nasty sound. But they all have their own presets and they all have their own filters. And here's an auto wah, just to give you a little. Some cool stuff that you can play around with. I know people were asking about the pedal board and what it can do and what's the point of it. So there's some really cool pedals in here, but I don't really like a fake pedal as opposed to a real pedal. Or if you like the colors and pictures and pretty things over here, you can just drag one in, and then this will actually give me a little bit of a difference tone. You can really crunch this up. Actually, we'll pretty nasty. And these are just things that I'm messing around with. Of course, if I were you, I would start by using some of the library descriptors here. So things like crunch guitar and cab driver will give you a. So there's like a little bit of a echo in that one, and some uh, bit of compression and EQ, as you can see, that's built into that. How about a phantom tremolo? So this is going to give you a much different sound. And I know it's going to be hard for you to hear it through a single mono speaker, but it's bouncing back and forth between the left and the right ear, allowing you to kind of get that wah-wah sound or feel to it, that tremolo, as it's called. This is a pop sparkler. So some cool stuff there. And again, if I want to back out and start to get a little more distorted, then we can get a little dirtier with things. And like, really, that's pretty awful. Ugh. Ah. Ugh. Ooh, that sounds pretty nasty. But now we're talking about really like dirtying up the signal. Ah, so much noise. But yeah, the library's got some really cool stuff here that you can play around with, and the experimental stuff also is a lot of fun. So this is Ghost World, where it's just really bouncy. That's always fun. That's one of my favorites for just like these really ominous background tones to mess around with. All right, so to get into the nuts and bolts of what's going on behind the scenes, we did show you Pedalboard a couple of times now. So basically, the signal that you're hearing right now is being generated through this monster fuzz. So it's kind of dirty, kind of distorted, a little buzzy. And then there's this whole bunch of delays right now that are in sync with the BPM of the project. That's what the sync button is for. It's all about syncing up with my 120 BPM, which is right here. So that's the way it's going to play out. Your delays, just like the delay designer allows you to do, the pedal board allows you to do that as well. So I just wanted to kind of show you that. What else? Yes, the amp, of course. So in this case, the amplifier being used for this particular signal, Ghost World, is this Logic looking, I want to say it's very Marshall-esque, but it has all the settings that you would typically find on the front of a guitar head. EQ, which you know about, right? Low, mids, and high frequencies, boosting and cutting. This has a little reverb in it, so a switch on and off for reverb. Effects, so we're turning on the effects, which is basically a tremolo or a vibration or vibrato. And your speed for that is here, and your depth for that is here. And then, of course, presence and master output is what basically becomes your input, which is gain, your output, which is master. Very similar to plugins, right? It's not that far off from a plugin. A guitar head is pretty much like a channel strip plugin. The other thing we know about is movement of microphones. So we know that if we played a signal here and that mic's away from the cab and we move that mic to the outside of the cab, we're going to get a little different of a sound. And vice versa. If we move it back versus being forward, our sound changes as well. So we have this little area to play with where we can move the mic in and out or closer to and towards the edge of the cone. Now, when we did our lessons the week of Thanksgiving, we actually talked about live guitar miking. We actually did it and put an amp out in front of the classroom. We took 2 or 3 mics, we recorded a couple different things, and we listened to the differences in the mic, the differences in the placement, the differences in the amplifiers. All those things came into play. And that's, again, something as an engineer you should experiment with. Mess around with sound and tone to make sure what you are getting is what you want. And you can get these really crazy ghosty sounds out of that. And again, moving the pedal board pieces, switching their positions could even change things. So now my positioning is different. So now my fuzz is on the delay, not the delay on the fuzz. It's a completely different way of now listening to it. So it gives you like this whole different version of your performance just by simply switching these two. And again, like I said, if in the amplifier you want to mess around with tone, move the mic around a little bit, change the EQ on the guitar head, mess around with the EQ and the tonal dials on your guitar to see if you can get something different or get something that you're looking for out of the performance. So I think that pretty much covers recording multiple tracks and, of course, some of the pedal board and amplifier. And we're going to actually say that we covered this. We're going to say we covered this because what the different pedals do. And again, that's going to take some time. I'm not going to go through the entire pedal board and show you what each pedal is. But of course, you know that each pedal is going to represent a different tune or a different tone or a different effect that guitarists and even on vocals, I've used guitar pedals on a vocal track. Why not? Why not experiment with stuff like that? It makes a lot of sense. It really does. To kind of look for tone that was never done before, to become a pioneer in the audio industry, not a parrot. Don't become a parrot. It's already been done. Do something new. Do something different. What is the purpose of bouncing a project in place? Well, I don't know if you got that question right. Bouncing a project in place really isn't what we would do. We would bounce a track in place, we can bounce clips in place, but we certainly would not bounce an entire project in place. What was probably meant by that is what's the purpose of bouncing a project and then putting it back into the project? So let's just highlight everything. Let's do a Command B, which is the bounce. And then, of course, add to project or add to iTunes. Now, I don't really like adding the project to iTunes. You know how I feel about iTunes. It makes a copy, it sends it to a place, it puts it in an undisclosed location under the title of unknown artist. None of that is fun, and none of that is easy to find. So I don't add it to iTunes ever. All right. What you might want to do, especially if you have MIDI within your project here, is you might want, and if you haven't bounced out that MIDI to audio yet, you might want to bring it back into the project. I don't mind that. So let's do that. Let's send this wave file back into the project and see what happens. Yes, we'll call it test. I don't care about that. I don't care what the name is. So we're basically taking all of the MIDI, the audio, the takes, the pack take folder, the sampling library, all that stuff that we did, and we're going to bounce it to a wave file, and then we're going to add it back into the project. Now, you're wondering where it is, right? I mean, where is the project I just bounced? And the answer is it's in here. It went to the audio files folder as it should. It's under the project name, which is test. I like that it doesn't throw it right back into the project. That could get annoying. I like the ability to go in and do it myself. And now here is the audio representation of the entire project. So we can solo this and we will play it back and see what happens. Punch in, and this is a test only on the punch in. And yes, it captured all its great and all its ugliness in that bounce. But that's the point. I bounced the entire project to an audio file and then placed that audio file back into my project. And why did I do that? Well, sometimes as you were watching, I might want to monitor this and look at it as a wave file. Sometimes MIDI notes and your view meter doesn't give you as good of a description visually that you like when you're using just audio files. All right. So I would technically do this at the very end of a project that has only MIDI or has any bit of MIDI in it, just to make sure that that MIDI didn't overpower anything, didn't make the wave files look bigger or stronger than they should be. I could then take that audio file, bring it back in, solo it, and then again, look at it in my stereo output to make sure that the levels and the mix is correct as an audio file. No effects happening here, right? I'm not going to add effects to that mix. I do have a channel EQ here on the master, and I can turn that off. It didn't have any effects in it anyway. But I'm basically using that as a quality control measure to make sure that when it bounced, it kept everything the way it was supposed to be. And then I was able to add it back into my project just as a double check. Wait, cancel that. Just wanted to delete this one. And just wanted to make sure. What the hell is going on? Yeah. I don't care about that. Why didn't it delete my test? Bye-bye, track. I don't know. I wanted to get rid of this. Goodbye. There we go. I don't know why I wasn't doing it in the mixer. Yeah, so I'm basically using it as a quality control measure just to make sure that what was done here, and you can see it's pretty much MIDI, still turns out well. And I am very good at looking at wave files at this point and making sure that what I'm seeing also translates to what I'm hearing. And again, just one of the last steps I would do towards a process, towards a goal here. So yeah, I wouldn't bounce a project in place. It would be bouncing a clip in place. So again, if I wanted to, we did that, right? We bounced this empty kit to its own audio file. So when we bounce, we could just bounce in place, right? And it'll do that, and it'll create an audio version of that, which we did. We did the same thing of an export. But you wouldn't be bouncing the project in place again, just to reiterate that. because that's not really what we're doing. So what is the purpose of bouncing a clip in place? Well, there you go. We just saw that, because with a clip, with an audio clip, you can do certain things that you can't do to MIDI. And we've already kind of talked about that back in Pro Tools, right? Converting all your MIDI to audio was one of the steps of that video project that we did. All right. How did he mix sub bass with the melody that good? Well, I did watch the master class, and I'm trying to remember exactly what he used, and I don't have the exact audio that he used, although I believe it is available on their website. So let's just take it as a question of how do you mix good sub bass. So EQ becomes a really good, manager of knowing where sub bass is. Sub bass, for anyone that's curious of what that even means, I would qualify it as somewhere between 20 hertz and 80 hertz. Basically, the bass that's less heard and more felt, where you would need a sub bass driver speaker to kind of push air, and it's pushing so much air that you can feel it in your chest and you can feel it everywhere. So sub bass to me really resides in that extreme low end. All right. So let's use our empty kit, this performance over here, for just a moment. Right. So we're going to try to get in there and kind of mess around with the sub bass of this particular thing. Now, to do that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the EQ of this track, and you can see right now I'm actually rolling it off. So maybe instead of rolling it off, I want to do a little boost. So let's reset this parameter here. Let's put this back to 0. Where's my boost? I'm gonna go 0. All right, and we're gonna mess around with this guy here. Why am I gonna mess around with him? I'm sorry, take that back. I'm not gonna mess around. I'm gonna turn that off. I don't want that on at all. He's supposed to be down here somewhere. I'm gonna mess around with this guy, and I'm gonna do that because I have the ability to create a curve for this guy. And you can see as I pull it down, there's a EQ curve that happens. So instead of cutting low end frequencies, I'm actually going to push them. And I'm also going to really knock down my Q value. So I'm going to explore a little bit of this area between 20 hertz and let's say 80 hertz, which happens somewhere in here. And let's really push it. And as I do that, I'm going to listen back to it. And again, my speakers of my laptop aren't going to really truly translate good sub bass low end. So I would probably need a nice speaker, a sub speaker, to really find out where that sub is and find out where that hit is to really shake the room. But let me just hear this right now. Let's turn on our analyzer. There we go. So it's really low frequencies are being generated somewhere around, let's say, right now it says 50 to 40 to 50 to 60, somewhere in there is where the sweet spot is of this. So then what I'd end up doing is probably widening the curve a little bit and then dropping it down just a little bit and cover a couple more frequencies in that range. Might be a little too much. We'll go a little shorter here, and then let's see how that results. Boom! Look at that. Look at my low end here. So this is kind of like your sub area, right around between 80 and 20. And if you had a good set of speakers, more than likely, you're going to shake the room when you make that EQ change. So, why is sub bass important? It's not really that important to certain genres of music at all. But for electronic music, a lot of people want to feel that kick in their chest. So what they do sometimes is they will take a kick drum, specifically just the kick drum, and they will make it its own track, and they will work on really tailoring that sub bass feel. There's also, by the way, a sub bass plugin in Logic. So if we go into this and we go down to EQ, no, it's not there. It's in, was somewhere. There it is. It's under specialized. So there's an exciter and a sub bass. An exciter is basically a sub bass for the high end, and a sub bass is a sub bass. So we can actually add in a really good bass booster or something below the kick outside of the EQ. And so that's what this will do. And it's actually really way too loud for my speakers that it's crackling. So yeah, I mean, I want you to kind of explore these things and start putting them on some of your tracks that are electronic tracks. If you can isolate the kick or isolate the low end of a bass synthesizer, you can really start strengthening and thickening up that low end using the sub bass plugin. And if you don't want to use the sub bass plugin, well, listen, messing around with EQ also does the trick as well. So let's go back into our question. How did he mix it that good? Well, he's a professional. He knows what sub bass is. He knows the frequency range. He knows the result he's looking for. He has the proper equipment to do it and to monitor it. If you can do all of that, that's how you make it sound good. If you can't do that, that's how you basically hunt and peck until you're blue in the face, and then who knows what's going to happen. We'll take one more question today. I want to learn how to record my vocals better, like what kind of mic to use and the room I should be in. Well, anonymous person that asked that question, which I don't think had anything to do with the master class. I think they were just throwing out personal questions at that point. But let me tell you this. All right. I think you can all agree that my microphone through Zoom right now sounds awesome. The recording that I do, the stuff that I put it through, the signal chain that I have actually ends up being pretty good. So I'm using a Shure SM7B. It's a considered to be a broadcast mic. But if anyone watches any of these live streaming videos, there's been a couple of artists that have used this as their vocal mic. I did watch SNL from home the other night. It was on Saturday night. I believe Miley Cyrus did a cover of a Pink Floyd Wish You Were Here, and she's singing into an SM7B. And I wonder why that was. I said, why would they pick up SM7B? Well, here's what I know about an SM7B. Number one, it sounds awesome. Has some really rich, thick, mid and low tones that make people sound great on the radio. Number two, it needs a lot of power, which means it's less susceptible to wind and environment sound. So having it outdoors by the fire like she did actually benefited her. Number three, it is a dynamic microphone, so it could take a beating. It does need a power source to really make it sound great, like I have it on now, like you guys know of when we get into the studio. So for me, I find my SM7B to be a very dynamic microphone, not just in the way it's made, but it is very good at a lot of different things. Now, would I go out to an environment down to the beach and record using this? No, I would not. That would be silly. If I was doing a radio show by the beach, maybe. But if I was recording beach sounds and seagulls and waves, no, I would not use this microphone. So it starts with know your mics, know what the purpose of a mic is. All right. Forget about the room for a moment. Just know your voice. What is it like? What's the dynamic range of your voice? Do you talk or sing or rap very high and have a lot of high frequencies? Or are you in the lower end? I consider myself, when I'm talking like this, to be on the lower end. So then I have a few choices. You know, I have my RE20, which is a great mic. I have my SM7B. I can use an SM57 or a 58. Those work very well because they're all dynamic microphones and they pick up low ends and they can take a good beating. But if I was going down to the docks, as you can see in our Instagram shot, and recording environmental sounds, I would want high frequency bass mics, condenser mics that pick up a lot of detail and resolution in the sound that's in front of them. It also can pick up a lot of wind as well, so you got to be careful of that. But these are like the steps that you go through when you're trying to pick out a mic. All right, so then once you have your mic and you kind of know what you're looking for, and again, if you're doing vocal work and you want it to sound crisp and clean, then you get a large capsule condenser. You know, you're not doing radio per se, so get a large capsule condenser mic. We've went through this a million times, and I know this might be repetitive stuff, but you want to learn how to record better vocals, start thinking about what your voice sounds like, start knowing the technical specifications of your microphones, and start purchasing equipment that makes sense. And see, of course, look at what others are doing. Of course. Why wouldn't you? But don't parrot everything. Know that they have a certain thing going on, and If yours matches that, fine. But if it doesn't, no, you have to make changes. And what room should I be in? Well, I'm in a fairly medium-sized room right now with nothing on the wall. I don't know if you guys are watching my video at all. I don't even know if my video is out there when we're live. I don't really care because I'm not doing anything but talking into microphones. Boring. But if you can see behind me, it's just a blank room. There's nothing in here. It's very reflective. There's no carpet. There's a spare bed, and then there's nothing but reflective ceiling and reflective walls. Does my mic sound terrible? Can I record in this room? The answer is yes. Did I need to put acoustic stuff on the walls? Do I need to be in my closet? No. In fact, I think the balance of this mic being very low end or isolated because of its makeup and its dynamics, this room lends itself to have this mic sound better. That's how I think of it. And this is how I see it. I have to record, I have to try, I have to mess around, and then I got to see where that leads me. You know, those are all the things you have to put into it. Again, there's not going to be a manual that comes out that says medium room, medium acoustics, get this mic. No, it's not going to happen. You guys have to, this is the reason why my class even exists, because there isn't a manual. What you learn throughout the years being in my class is the manual. Knowing what the computer does, knowing what the mic does, knowing what an artist can do, knowing what an interface does, knowing what a DI box can do, knowing what a passive amplifier can do. These are all the things that lend itself for you to make your decision and to find out what room you should be in, what mic you should use, and how you can record better vocals. You're not going to get the answers like this. Oh, I got an answer. Now I'm going to be a professional recording engineer. If that was as easy as it was, then you wouldn't do it. Everyone would do it. You wouldn't do it. It's too easy. And there wouldn't be an industry. And there wouldn't be anything special about it. And there wouldn't be an engineer who makes a lot of money. Or there wouldn't be an artist that makes a lot of money, because everything would be so flooded. Everything would be so generic. Everything would be ridiculously the same, that there would be no room for creativity and there would be no industry. And that's the point. It's going to be up to you. I can teach you the technical elements. You're going to have to take that and run with it to make it work for you to become a good engineer and a good, unique person. Anybody have any questions about these questions? We handled, what, 6 questions today? Maybe 7. So really appreciate you guys sticking around. Again, all these questions now are going to be up on the stream. You can download the Word doc and write in your notes about what you know about it and what you don't, what we talked about here. Again, a lot of it is review, so you can always go back to the old quizzes. You can always go back to the old notes and the old videos. This video will be up today right around 12 o'clock. So if you want to go back through it and rewrite your notes after you've printed out the sheet, please be doing everything you can to stay current with the class. Of course, you want to, get your work done. Project 8C, 8B, 8D, 9, 9A, and now 10. Make sure you're doing all that stuff, catching up on your integration, catching up on everything that needs to get done. Guys, I will see you tomorrow.
Mr. O'Toole.
Oh, what's up? Question.
I got a question. A personal one. How can I isolate the vocals and take out the background, the music on Logic?
Isolate of somebody else's mix?
Yeah.
You're never going to be able to do it perfectly.
On Logic?
No, you're not going to be able to do it perfectly on anything. It's already mixed. How are you extracting frequencies?
Like a cappella, basically, to the...
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. You can't. No one can.
Right.
Because the frequencies of someone's voice are also the same frequencies in music. And there's no way of any computer programming picking out a digital piece of sound and discerning whether it's vocals or music. There are ways that you can get close, but there is no way of getting acapellas. You know how acapellas exist, Anthony? Nobody magically separated vocals out from a track. And if you do that, and I can show you an example of that tomorrow, but if you do that, you're going to, number one, reduce the quality of the vocals, and number two, still have pieces of audio of the music behind the vocals. You'll never be able to isolate them. The way you get them is from the studio. The way you get them is from the original source, because they bounce them out as stems and they bounce them out as their own audio. People don't magically make separation of audio, music, and voice through a software program. There are some that can get close, but there's nothing that is worth taking that much time overdoing, to be honest with you.
Okay.
All right. If you come across something, a magic wand that does it, you let me know. But as far as I know, you have to get the stems from the original artist, which means you'd have to pay for the rights. You have to pay for the copyright. Electronic producers and engineers have some tricks, but again, it's never a perfect separation of vocals and music. Never. It's scientifically impossible. It's mathematically impossible, because the vocals and the music share frequencies and you can never separate them out. So I'll bring in a piece of music tomorrow, Anthony, to show you exactly what it sounds like to try to do that, but it's not going to be even close worth having and spending that much time overdoing.
All right.
All right, guys. So I will see you tomorrow, 10 a.m. right back here, and enjoy your beautiful day and get some work done. Later.